When you think about the music industry, there's this popular idea that it's modern,
Well,
right?
absolutely. Cutting edge, creative, inclusive.
Exactly. It's supposed to be this forward-thinking space, nothing like the old, stuffy corporate worlds we know have struggled with equality. That's the story, anyway.
But the data we're looking at today, it tells a brutally different story. A story of some really deep, persistent structural failures.
Okay, so let's get into it.
We are working through the findings of the Women Musicians Insight Report, which came out of the first ever UK musicians census. This was a massive undertaking.
Right, with help musicians and the Musicians Union.
Effort, yeah. It analyzed thousands of responses, and it gives us this definitive picture of what's really going on with gender inequality in the UK music scene.
So our mission today is really to get past all the industry PR, the self-congratulatory press releases, and look at the cold, hard facts.
Yeah.
This deep dive is essential if you want to understand the actual lived reality for women in music. And what this report shows is, frankly, it's alarming.
It is. Persistent barriers, unacceptable levels of harassment, and it really defines the career path for so many women.
So where do we even begin with that?
But we have to start with the sheer magnitude of the discrimination. I mean, the difference in experience between men and women it's just stark. It basically defines the landscape.
And there's a headline number for that, isn't there?
There is, and it's inescapable. 51% of women working in music reported experiencing discrimination simply because of their gender.
51%.
Just think about that for a second. Half of all the women who responded.
And that number, that 51%, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. You have to compare it.
Right.
The report found women are 8 times more likely to experience this kind of discrimination than men.
8 times. It's incredible.
Only 6% of male musicians reported facing it. So when you see an 8-to-1 ratio,
Yeah.
that's not an anomaly.
No, it's not. It's the fault line. It's the structural crack that runs under the entire industry experience. It points to this really ingrained culture that sees gender as a permissible reason for unequal treatment.
Of course.
If half your female workforce is facing discrimination, that's not just a few bad apples. It's systemic.
And that brings us to something even darker, which is the harassment.
Yeah. This is where the data really becomes a crisis point. We're talking about sexual harassment, not just general discrimination.
And the number is staggering. 33% of women said they had been sexually harassed while working.
1 in 3.
1 in 3.
And that just suggests an environment where this behavior is not only happening all the time, but it's often going unchallenged.
Well, we know it is, because the problem isn't just about what people experience themselves.
Right. A full quarter of women, 25%, have seen it happen to someone else. They've witnessed sexual harassment directed at others.
And what's so important here is that this isn't historical data. We're not talking about the bad old days of rock and roll.
No, this is now.
The report points out how ongoing this is. The Musicians Union General Secretary, Naomi Pohl, she noted that their Safe Space service gets regular, contemporary reports about this stuff.
Which confirms it. It confirms the census data is a real reflection of what's happening right now. It's a current safety crisis.
Not just a professional one.
Exactly. And that toxicity, it's not just a safety issue. It has a real material consequence.
Right.
When you have to operate in an environment where you're 8 times more likely to be discriminated against and where harassment is just normalized, it's almost impossible to just focus on your career.
You're constantly mitigating risk.
All the time, which leads us directly to the financial side of things.
Okay, so let's talk about the money. Because even for the women who manage to navigate that unacceptable culture, they run straight into the brick wall of the gender pay gap.
It's always there. Looking at the raw numbers, the average annual income for a female musician is £19,850.
Okay. And for men?
For men, it's $21,750.
So women are earning nearly a tenth less.
A tenth less. And that difference, it might not seem catastrophic year to year, but it compounds over a career. It fundamentally changes their financial security, their retirement.
But the real injustice, the structural problem, that comes out when you put those earnings next to their education.
Yes. This is where it gets really interesting.
This is what we're calling the education paradox. That pay gap exists despite the fact that women in music are, on average, way more qualified than the men.
The research shows a dramatic difference. Women musicians are 14% more likely to have a music degree than men.
14%.
And they're 15% more likely to have a postgraduate music qualification.
Okay, let's just pause on that. You're saying higher training, Higher investment in education, a higher level of skill.
And lower earnings.
It just completely dismantles the whole idea that the music industry is a meritocracy, where your skill and your training dictate success.
It does. If the educational investment is so much higher for women, but the financial return is lower, the barrier isn't talent.
It can't be. The barrier is the system, the structure itself.
So we have to ask, why doesn't that degree pay off? And one key reason is the type of work women tend to be channeled into. I'll get more into that with role segregation.
Right.
Higher education might get you into professional performance roles, but those jobs often rely on volatile, gig-based income. The men, who are less likely to have those degrees, might be moving into more stable, salaried tech and production roles.
So the high-value income streams.
Exactly.
Right.
Those roles stabilize their annual earnings. So the qualification opens a door, but it's a door to the lower paying part of the industry.
Yeah.
It doesn't give them the leverage for those high-value, behind-the-scenes jobs.
So unspoken rules are basically overriding merit.
That's what it looks like. And this lower pay translates directly into severe financial vulnerability.
What does the report say about that?
It found that 27% of female musicians said they don't earn enough money to support themselves and their family. For men, that figure was 20%.
That's a 7-point difference. It represents women being forced into career-ending choices just because the investment they made in their education isn't paying off.
It's a dead end for many.
And that precarity, it just accelerates the rate at which women leave the industry altogether.
It does.
So let's shift to that. Let's talk about career longevity. Because this is where the accumulated weight of all these barriers, it just becomes so visible in this massive age drop-off for women.
The drop-off is startling. I mean, if you look at the core working age, say musicians between 16 and 55,
Okay.
women make up a strong 47% of that group. It's almost parity.
Nearly half. That sounds pretty good.
It does. But the moment you look at the group over the age of 54, that figure just plummets.
How far?
Down to just 26%.
Wow.
Which means women are leaving or being pushed out of the industry at twice the rate of men as they get older.
And the report gives us a couple of reasons for that huge decline.
It does. Two key interconnected factors.
The first is pretty straightforward. Age discrimination.
Right. It's an issue for everyone, but 30% of women reported experiencing it compared to only 21% of men.
So the industry's obsession with youth and, marketability hits women harder.
Disproportionately, yes. But the second factor, this ties into something even more fundamental.
Carrying responsibilities.
Yes. The whole structure of a music career touring, late-night gigs, last-minute sessions, it's fundamentally at odds with the gendered reality of who is the primary carer for children.
And the numbers back this up.
They do. 22% of women musicians reported being a primary carer for a child. And that's not just a statistic about having kids.
No, it's about having that primary day-to-day responsibility.
Which makes that kind of career flexibility almost impossible. And the consequence is huge. Nearly 30% of women cited family and caring commitments as a major barrier to their career.
And for other genders.
Just 11%.
So it's almost a threefold difference.
A massive difference. And it's not just about general scheduling. The report gets specific.
It's about the logistics, right? The childcare.
The logistical nightmare. Inadequate access to childcare that can cover performance hours. A standard nursery closes at 6 p.m.
And a gig might start at 10 p.m. and run till 2 in the morning.
Exactly. So without affordable, flexible, industry-specific childcare, women face an unavoidable choice, career or family. And with the low pay we already talked about.
For many, that expensive late-night childcare is just impossible, so they're forced out.
That's the exit ramp. You have increased ageism, and you're shouldering the bulk of the caring responsibilities, and the industry is structurally unprepared to support you. It's a perfect storm.
Okay, so let's move to role segregation, because this feels like a critical piece of the puzzle. It helps explain the pay gap, even with the high qualifications, and why the career paths are so fragile.
It's absolutely central.
We mentioned earlier that a massive 79% of women in music are performing musicians.
Right. They're highly visible. They're the artists we all see on stage.
But the real issue is where they aren't.
It's where they're absent. In the technical, the production, the high control roles that often offer more stable salaries, higher rates, and, ownership over the work.
And the underrepresentation there is extreme.
It's shocking. Only 15% of live sound engineers are women. In the studio, it's even worse. Just 12% of studio and mastering engineers are women.
And that technical divide is so critical because those jobs engineering, production, they're often the most stable, lucrative, and age-resilient careers.
Exactly. You can be a mastering engineer in your 60s or 70s. You can work predictable hours from a home studio. You circumvent that whole late-night, low-pay performance circuit.
But women are being systematically excluded from those roles. They're seen as male domains.
And so they're funneled into the most volatile, least stable side of the business. And this segregation, it doesn't stop at job titles. It extends into the music itself, into genres.
Right. The data suggests it's just culturally easier for women to build a career in certain types of music.
Creating a really unequal playing field across the whole artistic spectrum.
And you see this in some of the biggest genre gaps. UK rap, for instance, a huge commercial market
Huge. But only 8% of women reported working in that genre.
compared to 16% of musicians of other genders.
And dance music shows a similar pattern. 18% of women versus 28% of all other genders.
So what does that imply? It sounds like cultural gatekeeping.
That's what it points to. It's not a lack of talent or interest. It's a structural issue where certain genres are, culturally coded as male, making it so much harder for women to break in and thrive.
And it reinforces this idea that women only belong in these very specific, often more feminized, performance roles.
And the report is very clear that this is unacceptable. It's not enough to celebrate female success in just one area.
No, you need targeted action to make sure women have an equitable chance everywhere, across all genres and all those technical and production roles.
So if we tie all these threads together, the report paints this comprehensive picture of disadvantage. It's a vicious cycle.
It really is.
You start with the alarming rates of harassment and discrimination.
Right. That toxic culture, combined with being channeled into lower-paying roles,
Results in the persistent pay gap. That pay gap then limits your ability to afford the childcare you need to meet the industry's crazy demands.
which, coupled with ageism, just forces women out of the industry by the time they reach their mid-50s.
It's a clear call to action. It validates the advocacy work that's been happening for years, and we know the Musicians Union is using this data to push for better pay gap reporting, more transparency.
And real action to address all of it.
Real action. Because the data shows us definitively that women are more educated than their male peers in music. They have the degrees, they have the training.
But they earn less and leave earlier.
It proves that the problem isn't a lack of talent or qualification. The limiting factors are structural.
So that leaves us with a final thought, really. A question for the listener. Given this undeniable proof of the education paradox, high qualifications, low earnings, what concrete steps must the industry take right now to make sure that education and qualification finally start to correlate with earning potential and career longevity?
How do you open up those technical and production roles that lead to long-term stability?
That is the challenge facing the UK music industry. And thanks to this report, all the data is now out in the open.